Hello dear comrades, Eldar with you. Thomas and Friends is a truly global brand that is known all over the world, and for the most part it was able to go beyond its native Britain thanks to Bridal Croft. She wanted to come up with a way to introduce Thomas and Friends to the world, and in particular to the United States of America. To do this, Bridal Croft created a show called Shining Time Station, which will be discussed on today's video. Originally, I wanted to release this video on July 4, the US Independence Day, but alas, I didn't make it by that date, but the video is still here. And now I will tell you about the show that gave many Thomas fans their childhood. So, let's move on. The end of 1986. Work on the new Thomas episodes was supposed until 1992. During this period, Thomas and Friends director David Mitton began working on his own project called Tux. They were filmed in the same hangar and he had no time for Thomas. During this period, Bridal Croft was trying to figure out a way to adapt Thomas and his friends for the US market. The railway series created by Wilbur Dodry has not been released in the US, and US editions were not filmed with Thomas. Plus, at this time, the United States of America had very strict laws regulating children's shows and cartoons. Bridal Croft was eager to take Thomas outside of Britain, and to do this, it was impressive to get into the US market. So, Bridal Croft decided to make a show that will be introduced Thomas's world to United States of America. Brett teamed up with Rick Sigelcoen, an American producer, director and scriptwriter who was well versed in such things, and together they began creating a show called Shining Time Station. The plot of the show was that everything was happening at the railway station in the US, actually at Shining Time Station itself, on the Indian Valley Railway. The main characters in the first season were Stacy Jones, the station master, and her nephew Matthew Jones. In addition to them, there were several other main characters in the first season. For example, Horace Schemer. As far as I understand, he is a very funny character but very greedy and always trying to find a way to make more money. For example, in the second episode of the first season, he printed out the wrong statue so that people would miss their trains and play on his slot machines which are located at the station, for which he was very scolded there. But you know what? I think now he is my favorite character. He is very funny and stupid. Also, in the first season, Gary Capper or Harry Capper appears. Harry Capper, an engineer and machine master who works at the Shining Time Station, and apparently he never saw Mr. Conductor. More about him later. Harry Capper also has a granddaughter named Tanya. In the first season, she was Matt's best friend and always helped him. Well, and the main star of the show, Mr. Conductor. Mr. Conductor is a little man, only 18 inches tall. He plays the role of magical conductor and constantly travels to the island of Sodor with help of his gold dust. In the first season, Mr. Conductor was played by Ringo Starr, since he was Thomas's narrator from season 1 to season 2. The plot of each episode is simple. At the beginning, the main characters do something interesting at the station. Then Mr. Conductor comes to them, he blows his whistle and starts telling a story about Thomas and his friends. And at that moment, the episode of the show begins. After that, the characters continue doing their own things, and closer to the end, Mr. Conductor tells another story. Also, from time to time, this program shows songs from their group, the Jack Spoke Band. These are such a small dolls people who live inside a machine with music. In appearance, they look like Muppets or something. The plot of each episode is simple, but it can hook the viewers. For example, I started watching this show and at some point I realized that I had already watched the entire first season. Moreover, all the actors play very well. This show does not seem drawn out. Everything is lively, funny, and most importantly, interesting. One episode of the show lasts 28 minutes, and in one episode they show 2 episodes of Thomas and his friends. The first season had 20 episodes, and they shown 25 episodes of the first season and the first 15 episodes of the second season, voiced and adapted for the USA by Ringo Starr. The show was shown on a PBC and they were a huge success. The show ended up being ever more popular than Thomas and his friends themselves. That is why at first all sorts of Thomas's productions, toys, clothes and other similar things were sold in the US under the Shining Time Station brand. In addition to the US, this show was shown for a time in Canada and New Zealand, but it did not stay there for long. The first season of Shining Time Station arrived on January 29, 1989, with an episode called A Place Unlike Any Others, which featured 2 episodes of Thomas and his friends, Thomas and Gordon and Edward and Gordon. It was then that many children from the United States met Thomas and his friends, who for many completely changed their lives for the best. In honor of Christmas 1919, it was decided to release the Shining Time Station Christmas special. It's called This Gift. This special is 57 minutes long, and in some editions even an hour long. For this special, the entire environment and even the show's intro were remained for the Christmas style. The plot was very interesting, but in order not to make the video longer, I will not talk about it now. The special also showed 2 winter episodes about Thomas and his friends, and here is some strange errors. The thing is that the Shining Time Station program was released on a VHS, so in the TV version of this special they showed 2 episodes from the first season, Thomas, Terence and the Snow and Thomas's Christmas Party. But for some reason, on the VHS release, instead of the episode Thomas, Terence and the Snow, they showed Thomas's Christmas Party, and the second episode was the episode from the second season, Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree. If you watch this special, you can see that the episode Thomas, Terence and the Snow belongs at the beginning, because in it Mr. Conductor talks about Thomas's snowplow. Why this happened? I don't know.
Hey, wait you two! Don't forget your hats and mittens.
We don't need them.
Oh, you don't you? That's what Thomas said about his snowplow. Don't you remember?
Oh yeah, would you tell us that one again?
Very well.
But still, the special turned out good. It was released on December 29, 1919, and it was very much remembered by viewers in the United States of America. Since the second season, the show has undergone huge changes. For the most part, this has affected in the actors and characters of the show. Matt and Tanya only appears in 2 episodes of the second season, and then Matt's place was taken by Daniel Jones or Dan Jones, another nephew of Stacy Jones, and Tanya's place was taken by 2 girls at once, Kara Cooper, another granddaughter of Harry Cooper, and Becky. Engineer Harry Cooper left to work for another railway, and his place was taken by another engineer, William or Billy Wofferfers. This is, by the way, the same engineer from the Thomas and the Magic Railroad. More about it later. Skimmer is the same Skimmer, and the most interesting things happen to the Mr. Conductor. At this point, Ringo Starr has stopped being the narrator on Thomas, and his place was taken by Michael Angelis in the UK dub and George Carlin in the US dub. And in the end, they decided to give the role of Mr. Conductor to George Carlin. George Carlin was actually pretty good, but he didn't have all the energy that Ringo Starr had. That's just my opinion, by the way. Also, since then were episodes from season 2 and season 1, George Carlin redubbed them. But still, the second season of Shining Time Station was quite successful. It showed a few episodes from Thomas and Friends season 2, 3 and couple of episodes from season 1. It was very good. The second season of Shining Time Station began airing on November 18, 1999, with an episode called Scare Dares, and it features episodes from Thomas and His Friends season 2, The Ghost Train, and season 3 episode Thomas, Percy and the Dragon. After the end of the season 2, the creation of season 3 of the show began, and there is not much to say about its creation. Everything was the same at the previous times. The only difference between this season and the previous ones is that it had 25 episodes instead of 20. Most likely they decided to do this because they understood that this will be the last season of the show. At that time, Thomas and His Friend had already begun to show up in a regular television in the United States of America, so there was essentially no need for this show to exist. Season 3 arrived on March 22, 1993 with the episode Becky Makes a Wish. Season 3 arrived ending the first season of Thomas and His Friends. After the end of Season 3 on June 11, 1993, the show was closed, but her story didn't end there. On February 28, 1995, the spin-off of Shining Time Station began airing, calling Family Specials. They were basically just extended episodes, but they didn't feel drawn out. Everything was pretty good and lively. There were 5 episodes in total, and they showed 10 episodes from the 4th season of Thomas and His Friends. Unfortunately, as I said, the 5th and final episode of the spin-off arrived on November 20, 1995, and the spin-off closed, but that's not at all. After that, the spin-off Mr. Conductor's Thomas Tales began to air. These were almost hour-long episodes where only Mr. Conductor's was on air. He did something on the show and at the same time told stories about Thomas and his friends. The show finished showing the 4th season of Thomas and re-showing episodes from 1st, 2nd and 3rd season. In total, 6 episodes were released. They lost one release on November 11, 1996, and the show finally closed, but not at all. After the original Shining Time Station closed, a separate spin-off about Schemer was released called Schemer Presents. This program was almost entirely engendered by him. In this program, Skinner answered, or rather tried to answer, various questions and find solving the problems. But since he is stupid, he could not do anything. Therefore, from the Shining Time Station, familiar heroes came and helped Schemer solve various problems. Unlike all other shows of this type, this show did not show Thomas's episodes. However, it's not surprising because each episode is only 9 minutes long. A total of 12 episodes were released and apparently the show was closed. Also, I would like to return this show, it was so much fun to watch. Oh, and it's worth mention that Shining Time Station along with some of the characters from the original show appeared in the movie Thomas and the Magic Railroad. But you know what, I don't think I need to say much about it. There are already tons of reviews of this movie on YouTube. The show and its old episodes were shown on PBC until 1997, but after that the show went off the air. When Thomas and the Magic Railroad came out, they tried to return the show on Nickelodeon, but somehow it didn't work out. At this point, there were no more attempts to resurf the show. Shining Time Station closed, and apparently forever. But despite this, the show was more than successful. Thanks to it, Thomas and his friends were able to go beyond their native Britain and were able to find success in the United States of America and around the world. And who knows, maybe Thomas will have remained a local brand without this show. Thank you to it for giving many Thomas fans their childhood. And that's all for today. Thank you all for watching and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you all. Goodbye, comrades.